After attending both days of the first convention ahead of the national dialogue, Build One South Africa has voiced serious concerns about the country's preparedness for the upcoming talks. Now we'll be in discussion with the Build One South Africa's deputy leader, Nobuntu Hlazo-Webster, on these concerns and what to explore and what this actually means for the future of South Africa. We now bring her in. Nobuntu, thank you so much for your time this evening here in SABC News. Let's start off here. I mean, you attended both days of the National Convention, and going into this National Convention, Nobuntu, you'd remember that there was a lot of criticism and a lot of skepticism, not only from South Africans, but even from you as political parties. What do you make of the 2 days of this National Convention?
Thank you so much, and good evening to your viewers. So first of all, I want to start by why we have believed that actually there's a need for a dialogue. We have a historical gap in South Africa. We had an oppressive system of apartheid. We were then transitioning, and we transitioned into democracy in 1994, but we never ever created a national process for citizens to actually articulate their lived experience and to resolve the systemic and social fractures that we have. So we need that space. But more importantly, we're in a current crisis, a social, economic, and political crisis. And there are other nations that have turned to national dialogues at moments of crisis to either reset the direction, chart the way forward. And that's no different for us. Lastly, we have a post-election mandate vacuum where the 2024 elections actually delivered no majority for any parties. And therefore, the GNU was not given a mandate. So you need dialogue essentially to determine a shared plan for the country. So that is the first. What do we make out of this process? What do we make out of the dialogue that we attended over the past 2 days? There are a number of critical issues with the dialogue. We had raised issues pre the dialogue about the issue of transparency. We had raised issues pre the dialogue about the issue of inclusion. And you found that actually there were some of the legitimacy concerns which had also been raised, not just by ourselves, by the legacy foundations, by other political parties, by society, that actually surfaced. It's very clear that the dialogue was rushed and underprepared. That was our observation. It's very clear that there wasn't a process that determined how representation is actually constituted. And so that created a little bit of chaos, and in ensuring that the representation is legitimate of all the groups in South Africa. But most importantly for us, there was not a framework upon which to engage. You cannot bring from a whole nation various sectors and groups of representation without a framework upon which to dialogue. So that really was the gaps, very serious gaps and challenges with the dialogue. But having said that, and linking to what I had raised about the need for a dialogue, what did work, as messy as it was that there were people in the room, there were South Africans in the room that were dialoguing and engaging about our country. They were expressing their issues, they were expressing what they wanted to see, and that was important.
And I mean, Nobuntu, these are some of the concerns that many South Africans had raised in saying that, we do know and realize that we need to have a dialogue as South Africa, but not at this very moment. What were the missing gaps that you found while attending this two-day national convention? And what can be learned from this process going into the next convention that still needs to take place?
So going into the next convention, what's going to be important is that there is a process to determine how you legitimately represent all the groups. There has to be a process that actually speaks to and communicates and engages all the various groups that needs to be represented, that gives them the space to choose their representatives, to determine what their agendas are that they want to put in the room, and to take it from there, rather than saying, let everybody come into one room to determine what must happen. That's first of all very important. Secondly, like I say, there is going to need to be a framework, a document upon which, a baseline upon which we engage, to be able to contribute to be able to critique. Those groups should be able to then do that going forward. And then that process can then unfold into the various wards, into the various other spheres of government and of representation and of community in South Africa. Lastly, and most important, there needs to be a sense that the leadership takes this seriously. Their visibility and their continued presence in the room is really, really important. There were very many complaints about a moment where the deputy president was not seen, and just not enough visibility of government, especially in the room. And that is going to be important for South Africans.
And Nobuntu, just looking at the fact that building up to this national convention, we saw the likes of the legacy foundations pulling out of this convention. We also saw that there was really not a lot of representation when it comes to some political parties who chose not to be in the room. What does this all mean for the bigger national dialogue that still needs to be held if key stakeholders in the country were not present in the room, like you're also citing government?
So what's very important is that the issues that we have raised as political parties, as civil society, the legacy foundations have raised issues, that those are taken seriously. One of the issues we've raised is about transparency, is about how this is being resourced. And without being transparent about that as a start, and to broadly say, yes, some of it will come from government, some of it will come from donations in kind, we need almost a line-by-line articulation of exactly how this is going to happen. We also need transparency about how the groupings, the representation of the groupings is sought or is pursued, or the process upon which that is determined. We need that transparency as well. We also, lastly, need to make sure, and this organizational team, the presidency, is going to need to make sure that they are able to demonstrate that there has not been partisanship that has taken place, that there's independence, that there's inclusivity, and they need to be transparent about the process upon which groupings are represented and are selected, and to be transparent about the process upon which, even as we talk about a framework, that framework is concluded, or how the process of coming to that framework is done. That's going to be important going forward. And then, like I say, the visibility is critical, particularly from government, particularly from the executive throughout that process.
Nobuntu, thank you so much for your time. That's Nobuntu Hlazo-Webster. She's the deputy leader for Build One South Africa, just giving us her insights in terms of the national convention which took place over the past 2 days.